You won't believe what happened at this Australian checkpoint in December 2023. What started as a routine bag inspection turned into one of the biggest drug busts in the country's history. And the two men caught? They were Europe's most wanted kingpins, hiding in plain sight. Stay with me, because this story has more twists than you can imagine. It was December 15th, 2023, early morning at Sydney International Airport. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and Terminal 1 was buzzing with passengers from overnight flights. Among them were two men who had just stepped off Qantas Flight QF2 from London Heathrow. They carried Belgian passports, expensive luggage, and confident smiles. Their names were listed as Marcus de Vries and Johan Petersen. They told customs they were here for a quick holiday, 5 days of Australian sunshine before heading back to their consulting jobs in Brussels. Everything about them seemed perfectly normal. But Senior Border Force Officer Sarah Chen noticed something others didn't, and that small observation would crack open an international criminal empire. Officer Chen had been working at Sydney Airport for 15 years. She'd seen every type of traveler, every kind of smuggling attempt. When Marcus and Johan's luggage passed through the X-ray scanner, something caught her eye. The images showed unusual density patterns in their suitcases. Not the typical shape of drugs wrapped in clothing or electronics with hidden compartments. This was different, more sophisticated. The shadows on the screen didn't match what should be inside a tourist's bag. She flagged them for secondary inspection. When Marcus and Johan were pulled aside, they didn't panic. That was the first red flag. Most innocent travelers get nervous when detained, even briefly. Their hearts race. They fumble with documents. They ask questions repeatedly. But these two? They remained calm, almost rehearsed in their responses. They presented their documents smoothly, answered questions with practiced ease, and maintained steady eye contact. Marcus explained they worked in import-export consulting, helping European companies with Asian shipping regulations. Johan added that they'd been planning this trip for months and couldn't wait to visit Bondi Beach. They even had hotel reservations and a list of tourist attractions they wanted to see. Officer Chen asked them to follow her to the inspection area. As they walked through the sterile corridors of the customs section, she radioed her colleague Officer Davis to run their passport numbers through Interpol's database. The response came back quickly, and what it revealed made Chen's instincts sharpen. Marcus de Vries had visited Sydney 3 times in the past 8 months, Johan Petersen twice. Each trip lasted less than a week. For supposed tourists, this pattern was highly unusual. People don't fly 24 hours across the world multiple times a year for short holidays, unless there's another reason. The jet lag alone would be unbearable. And these men didn't look like wealthy retirees who could afford such frequent travel just for leisure. In the inspection room, Officer Chen opened the first suitcase. Inside were clothes neatly folded, toiletries arranged in a clear plastic bag, and what appeared to be standard travel essentials. Nothing immediately suspicious. But then Officer Martinez, her partner, noticed 6 identical bottles in the toiletry bag. They were unmarked, sealed with what looked like industrial packaging, and filled with a thick cream-colored liquid that didn't move naturally when tilted. Marcus claimed they were specialty hair products for his sensitive skin, something he had to import from a specific supplier in Germany. But the explanation felt rehearsed, too specific, as if he'd prepared for this exact question. Officer Rodriguez, the chemical analyst on duty, tested the liquid with a detection swab. The machine beeped, and the digital readout made everyone in the room freeze. The substance wasn't shampoo or conditioner. It was a chemical precursor used in drug manufacturing. Specifically, it was BMK, also known as benzyl methyl ketone, a key ingredient in producing MDMA and amphetamines. 6 bottles meant approximately 3 liters of this precursor, enough to manufacture tens of thousands of pills on the street. Street value? Over $2 million once processed and distributed. Marcus's face twitched. Just slightly, but enough for Chen to notice. Johan shifted his weight, his calm demeanor cracking at the edges. But they said nothing, probably calculating their next move, weighing whether to keep denying or ask for a lawyer. But Officer Chen wasn't done. She moved to the second suitcase, this one belonging to Johan. The X-ray had shown the strangest density pattern here. When she unzipped it and began removing clothes, she felt along the bottom. The lining felt too thick, too rigid. Officer Rodriguez helped her, and together they discovered the false bottom. It was expertly constructed, nearly invisible unless you knew what to look for. The fabric matched perfectly, the stitching was professional, and it was sealed with industrial-grade adhesive. When they peeled back the lining, what they found made the room go silent. Hidden beneath were industrial pill press molds, the kind used to stamp logos onto tablets. There were vacuum-sealed bags of white powder that would later field test positive for high-purity cocaine, 92% pure, which is almost unheard of at street level. And there were detailed packaging materials, including branded bags with logos Chen recognized from European drug seizure reports. These weren't generic bags. They were signature packaging from a specific syndicate, one that Interpol had been tracking for years. Marcus and Johann's calm demeanor finally shattered completely. Johann insisted it was a setup, that someone must have tampered with their luggage in London. Marcus demanded to speak with the Belgian consulate immediately, raising his voice for the first time. But their protests meant nothing now. Officer Chen called for backup from the Australian Federal Police. This wasn't just a customs violation anymore. This was international drug trafficking, organized crime, and potentially something much larger. While they waited for the detectives to arrive, Officer Davis radioed with urgent information from Interpol. The response had come through, and it changed everything. Marcus de Vries wasn't his real name. The passport was genuine, issued by Belgian authorities, but it had been obtained using falsified documents and a stolen identity. His real name was Matthias van der Berg, a Dutch national wanted in 4 European countries for drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime leadership. His photograph matched facial recognition databases, and there was a red notice issued for his arrest. Johann Petersen was actually Jan Kowalski, a Polish chemist who had disappeared from Europol's radar 3 years earlier, after being linked to multiple clandestine drug laboratories in Rotterdam and Berlin. He was suspected of designing synthetic drug formulas and training other chemists in production techniques. The pieces started falling into place like a puzzle Officer Chen had been solving without realizing it. These weren't tourists or consultants. They were masterminds of a sophisticated smuggling operation that had been flying under the radar for years. And Sydney wasn't just a random destination. It was a crucial node in their global network. When the federal police detectives arrived, they took over the interrogation. Detective Inspector James Crawford and his team specialized in organized crime and international trafficking. What they discovered over the next several hours of questioning was staggering. Matthias and Jan weren't just smugglers. They were logistics coordinators for one of Europe's largest drug syndicates, a network that operated across 12 countries and generated an estimated 200 million euros annually. The syndicate had connections to Colombian cartels, Chinese chemical suppliers, and distribution networks spanning from Scandinavia to North Africa. Here's how their operation worked, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. Australia wasn't their destination, it was their laundry. The country's geographic isolation and strong currency made it perfect for their purposes. They would fly to Sydney with chemical precursors and small amounts of high-purity cocaine, items that were difficult to source in Australia and therefore commanded premium prices. They would drop these materials with local contacts, established criminals who would distribute them across the Australian market. In return, they would receive payment in Australian dollars, which they would then convert through a network of money exchange businesses, cryptocurrency transactions, and legitimate-seeming trade invoices. The cleaned money would flow back to Europe disguised as payment for consulting services, software licenses, or art purchases. The short trips made perfect sense now. They weren't here to enjoy the beaches or sightsee. They were here to complete transactions and maintain their supply chain. 5 days was enough time to meet contacts, drop off product, collect payment, and return home. Any longer would draw attention. Any shorter wouldn't allow for proper coordination. And by traveling frequently, they could move smaller amounts each time, reducing the risk of major seizures while maintaining steady supply. But there was more. When police executed a search warrant at their hotel room in Bondi, they found encrypted phones with secure messaging apps, detailed ledgers written in code, and contact lists containing over 200 names. These weren't street dealers. These were bankers, lawyers, shipping company executives, and corrupt officials who facilitated the movement of drugs and money across continents. One name stood out particularly, a customs officer in Antwerp who had been flagging containers for random inspection, but actually ensuring that specific shipments passed through without genuine scrutiny. The detectives also found evidence of their most ambitious plan yet. Matthias and Jan were in Sydney to finalize a deal for a shipping container of precursor chemicals hidden inside industrial machinery parts, scheduled to arrive from China the following week. The container manifest listed it as containing automotive press equipment being shipped to a manufacturing company in Melbourne. But the real cargo was 42 barrels of chemical precursors, enough to produce synthetic drugs for the entire European market for 6 months. The street value, once processed and distributed, would exceed $500 million. Australian authorities immediately coordinated with Europol, Interpol, and law enforcement agencies across Europe. The evidence collected from Matthias and Jan's phones and computers provided a treasure trove of intelligence. Within 48 hours, simultaneous raids were conducted in Amsterdam, Brussels, Berlin, Warsaw, and London. It was a coordinated operation involving over 300 officers across 5 countries, all moving at precisely the same time to prevent anyone from destroying evidence or fleeing. Over 30 individuals were arrested in those raids, including the syndicate's financial controller, who had been operating from a luxury apartment in Amsterdam, 2 shipping company managers in Rotterdam, who had been falsifying cargo manifests for years, a Belgian customs officer who had been taking bribes to wave through suspicious shipments, and several mid-level distributors who coordinated street sales. One of the arrested was a seemingly respectable art dealer in Brussels, who had been using gallery sales to launder drug money, inflating the prices of paintings to justify large cash transactions. The seized evidence was overwhelming. Police recovered 17 kilograms of pure cocaine, 42 liters of chemical precursors stored in a warehouse outside Berlin, 3 million euros in cash hidden in various locations, and documentation of transactions dating back 7 years. But the most significant discovery was a network map found on Matthias's encrypted laptop. It detailed every person, every route, every transaction in their operation. It showed shipping routes from South America to Europe, chemical suppliers in China, distribution networks in Australia, and money laundering channels through Dubai and Singapore. The investigation revealed that the syndicate had been operating since 2016, growing steadily by staying below the radar. They avoided flashy displays of wealth, never used violence unless absolutely necessary, and maintained strict operational security. They compartmentalized information so that if one person was arrested, they couldn't compromise the entire network. They rotated travel routes and methods, sometimes flying direct, other times taking circuitous paths through multiple countries. They used encrypted communication and changed phones frequently, and they cultivated relationships with corrupt officials who could provide warnings if investigations got too close. But despite all their precautions, they made one critical mistake. They underestimated Officer Sarah Chen. They assumed that because they looked professional, because their documents were perfect, because their story was plausible, they would pass through customs like thousands of other travelers. They didn't account for 15 years of experience, for instincts honed by seeing patterns that others miss, for the dedication of officers who treat every inspection as potentially significant. Matthias Vanderberg and Jan Kowalski were formally charged with international drug trafficking, money laundering, conspiracy, and using false documents. They faced over 25 years in Australian prison before potential extradition to Europe, where additional charges awaited them. The Netherlands wanted Matthias for running a criminal organization. Poland wanted Jan for operating illegal laboratories. Belgium wanted both of them for corrupting public officials. The legal proceedings would take years, but the evidence was ironclad. The evidence collected from their arrest led to the dismantling of their entire network. Over the next 6 months, authorities seized more than 300 kilograms of drugs, froze 47 bank accounts containing over 50 million euros, and arrested 63 individuals across 9 countries. The shipping container they had been waiting for was intercepted before it left port in Shanghai. The Chinese authorities arrested the chemical suppliers, and their factory was shut down. The corrupt customs officer in Antwerp was arrested at his home and faced his own lengthy prison sentence. The money laundering network was exposed, and several legitimate businesses that had unknowingly processed dirty money cooperated with investigations. Officer Sarah Chen received a commendation for her vigilance and was promoted to training supervisor, where she now teaches new customs officers how to spot sophisticated smuggling operations. Her decision to trust her instincts and conduct a thorough inspection had stopped a shipment that could have produced millions of drug doses, but she remained humble about it. In an interview with the Australian Federal Police Journal, she said that border security isn't about catching every criminal, it's about paying attention to the details others miss. The too perfect story, the too calm demeanor, the pattern that doesn't quite make sense. She emphasized that gut instinct is valuable, but it must be backed by thorough procedure and interagency cooperation. The case became a training example for customs officers worldwide. Interpol published a detailed case study that was distributed to border agencies across 50 countries. It demonstrated that modern drug trafficking isn't always about hidden compartments and desperate mules carrying drugs in their stomachs. Sometimes it's about sophisticated criminals who blend in perfectly, who use legitimate travel patterns and professional appearances as camouflage. They fly business class, stay in nice hotels, and have perfectly crafted cover stories. The lesson? In border security, there's no such thing as a routine inspection. Every passenger could be exactly who they claim to be, or they could be someone else entirely. The Australian Federal Police estimated that dismantling this network prevented approximately 15 tons of synthetic drugs from reaching the streets over the next 5 years. That's 15 tons that won't fuel addiction, won't fund violence, won't destroy families. It's impossible to calculate how many lives were saved by one officer's attention to detail on a December morning at Sydney Airport. If you found this story incredible, wait until you hear about the woman who smuggled diamonds in her prosthetic leg, or the diplomat who used his immunity status to run a cocaine empire. These stories are real. They're happening at checkpoints and borders every single day, and I'll be sharing more of them right here. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode of Border Watch Stories. Drop a comment below telling me which country's border security you want to hear about next. And remember, the next time you're at an airport, look around. You never know who's standing next to you in line. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.